Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the Sweet Tooth Season 1 finale, a great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we finally get a little background into Tommy's, situation. First and foremost, I do love that opening because it seems disconnected, but also it's just like that one particular dude's like, whoa, what are you doing taking off your helmet and everything? It's like, whatever, man. It's just like, this is like, the government or big pharma. This is just them manipulating things and stuff like that. I'm assuming he's hitting a vape pen. And it's just kind of like, at the very least, he's like, oh, do you know what, there's something 1,000 times more deadly in this. You know what's in this? Is like, no, exactly. He's like, do you know what's in that thing you're smoking right now? And it's just like, all right, just put it out. And they turn into a wrestling match. Home dude's mask it, trying to take it off. It's so interesting because I think that dude was kind of in conspiracy mode. Like, oh, this is, we're outside. We've been disinfected multiple times. Ironically enough, early days of that situation, part of me wonders, like, I brought it up last episode of like, oh yeah, there's like some like little winks and nods to like the real world in certain cases. I'm like, was that written like that because of certain circumstances in the real world? Just like how some people didn't take things seriously at one point, and even when things did kind of get serious, there's still people like, nah, it's not real. I don't know if that's what that's supposed to be. I'm not trying to get anything controversial started, but I thought that was kind of interesting. Once again, just a little topical, definitely in that regard. Well, in some regard, as I mentioned before, but I thought that was interesting. And irony strikes when home dude gets hit by Tommy's car, and he's like, I'm so sorry. He's like, you didn't see me? I'm in a freaking yellow suit. But it's like he's taking his wife. I think last episode I called her Laura. It's like Louisa is her name. And so, well, that might have been episode 6 I called her by that name. But I might have brought her up 6 and 7, but whatever the case may be. Obviously, he manages to get her up to the maternity ward, and that's that conversation of like, what if it ends up being, she's like, no, it's going to be okay, it's going to be fine, because at this point, the hybrid thing has already started happening, and the world's kind of flipped upside down. Even the narrator saying, like, the thing that should have brought us together actually ended up tearing us apart, like, because during such a, like, a virus, the pandemic that they're going through, like, because they had even talked about in earlier episodes that this thing was like worse than like the Black Plague or something like that. They haven't seen anything like this, I think, historically speaking, since the Black Plague. And so I think the fear of like, what if my kid ends up like that? It's like, no, I need my kid to be normal, because it's already a stressful enough time, especially when you have people literally outside rioting with signs saying kill them, even though these are babies. Regardless, it's like, oh, this is something we don't understand. It's also a fearful time with everything that's going on, and obviously this misinformation of connecting them to the virus, which we now realize like the virus was something else. They're potentially just a byproduct of the virus. It just leads to those conversations that back then, especially back then, that's like, oh, they're the blame for it. So all that fear, they need something to point all their anger towards, and it's like, oh, these things are responsible, yada yada yada, so forth. But obviously, we kind of come back present day, and obviously, Tommy nor Bear could find Gus, and they're going to keep looking for him. But it's like, maybe we shouldn't have ever brought him here. But Bear's like, yeah, he needed to know. Like, not knowing is the worst part. So, but the fact is that the conversation comes up about, it's like, right, you know what this all means? That means Gus was like the dates show that he was the first one before even all the other hybrids were, because they were born, he was made, so it makes him even more special. But he's like, it doesn't matter, but it doesn't change anything. But he's looking at, changes everything, does it? Because for her, it's like, she believed that she believed that the nature, like, she believed that this was all like nature was turning against humanity, because, that makes that even more interesting, because, like, I didn't talk about it, but, like, his pubba told him stories like that the world was on fire, that was all to keep him inside, but also to make it seem like the world turned against him, against, like, humanity, and that's why hybrids came to be. That was him, I guess that plays into the fact is that he had, wanted to write stories, so he kind of concocted a great story, a story that Gus needed to hear and believed, so he wouldn't realize, kind of like, oh, right, you were kind of a byproduct of science, that, you want to at least make it believe like there's some grand, like, beautifulness behind your birth, and not being kind of like, it's kind of effed up to say, but like a Frankenstein experiment type of thing. Not a one for one, but it's like just being a byproduct of experiments, like, that you were made and not just necessarily born. Like, it makes you kind of feel a certain way. But obviously, that kind of goes back to what I'm saying about Bear. She believed in it so much that this was a nature, like, gave birth to them, that she even said that, like, she thought they were brought to this world to heal the planet. She's like, hell, I even built an entire army around that belief, and for it to kind of be a lie. So it's like, it's not just Gus's world that got flipped upside down. Even her beliefs have gotten flipped upside. So it's like, you stay here and I'm gonna go look for Gus. She's like, right, you bring him back or I'm gonna kick your ass. And Tommy's just waving his finger like, fine. So obviously we also focus a little on her time spent with Judy, because obviously she's like reading up on some of the things, but obviously it's like, what's the connection between the hybrids and the virus? And all she can say is, Birdie didn't talk about it too much, just that they're two sides of the same coin. So what that necessarily means, we still don't know. But Judy talks about having been left behind, because it was like, the reason why she stuck around, because it's like, Birdie was my best friend. She was like a sister to me. You know what it's like to be left behind? And she's like, yeah, I understand that better than anyone. Because she talked about it over and over again, that her parents were killed by last men, but in actuality she's like, no, my parents died like everyone else. Because I think for her it was easier to say like the last men killed her parents, just because it's like, it just makes it, I think it gave her somewhere to point her anger at, because we ended up finding out her sister was a hybrid and was taken from her just when she lost her parents, and she was left behind. She's like, I was alone for a long time. And she stayed away from adults because she blamed adults. She hated adults because she blamed them for being like, right, you took my sister from me. You couldn't do anything for any people I cared about. Like, you took my sister, you left me alone. I had no one, like no family left to turn to. And eventually later on down the road, she found Tiger, who was under similar circumstances, you know? And so she formed a family. But even now that family's gone. And this new family she's kind of building for herself with Tommy and Gus. They had to come back at this point in time. So we even learned her real name is Becky Walker, interestingly enough. So that she was adopted. So, but, you know, to kind of have no one in the world and stuff like that, you know. But obviously, like, Judy tells her not to give up because she was looking for her sister. Because it also makes sense why she has the mentality she does, like, no, protect the hybrids. Because for her, protecting the hybrids is kind of in her mind making up for the fact that she wasn't able to protect her own sister, even that she had given up. But it's like, if I can keep that, she'd given up, but it's like she put all that energy to protecting other hybrids, so no one ever has to go through being separated from the person that they love ever again. They never have to feel alone again, you know? So it's kind of beautiful to know that, like, in sad circumstances led her to have the mission that she has. But Judy told her not to give up. It's like, if Gus, after all these years, could find his way back here, that, you know, that gives hope to you that maybe your sister's still out there and she'll find her way back to you. So we've got that. We've got the whole situation with Amy, and obviously the general rose up. It's like, right, he's coming after her into preserve. Because he's been making his mission to wipe out, well, not just him, but a lot of people have made it their mission to wipe out hybrids. And it's like, well, now we actually need the hybrids because we need to experiment on them because they're actually the means for the cure. But for him, he's saying that they're a mutation. He says if it wasn't by a stroke of nature, the fact is that we kind of need them or something like that. I was like, does he not? That's why I'm wondering, does he think it is a natural thing? Does he not know that this whole virus situation is a man-made thing? I mean, only people who would know were those at Fort Smith. But the fact is, he says, like, I think he was talking more so about the fact is that we need them, not necessarily that they were a natural mutation, that he probably knows, or maybe he isn't. Maybe he's just someone that believes he knows everything. Because we still haven't gotten, even this episode, we didn't get any background onto who he is. Maybe we get some in the future of like who he is and why he has. I mean, it's not like he's the only one that has this mentality. There's a lot of hateful people in the world that have that mentality. Being hate, you know, it's because there's something different in humans. We have a tendency like, oh, if you're different from us in any shape or form, you know, history's shown that how humanity's reacted towards someone that's different from them, even if on some levels they're still the same. It's like, oh, but you're different in other ways and you need to be looked at upon differently. So he ends up, you know, trying to raid the place, but Amy had already set up the whole place. And for her, it's like, they're better than you and me. They don't have the complications that humans do. Because I think the hybrids themselves are, you know, they're kind of like a pure species. It's like, they still hold all the bright and wonderment we need for the future of this world. humans being the complicated that we aren't just black and white, that there are shades of gray, but maybe with the hybrids, it's a little more black and white in the sense that they are good. Like, if we gave them a chance to grow, they could bring so much light to this world that we've kind of dimmed with so much of our own darkness. Not her exact wordings, but I think that's kind of like the point she's trying to get across, that they can be the ones that kind of make this world better than it was. Because look at what we done over our span of history, what we did. They're the next generation. They're the ones who are going to inherit this earth, and they're going to make it better. Once again, even Gladys saying, like, they will live long past us, and there's nothing you can do about it, no matter how much he wants to try and exterminate them. But Amy had set up everything, like the fireworks and everything to go off. So I was like, wow. I was kind of scared. Because initially I was like, please don't tell me you're going to blow up the preserve. I was like, please don't sacrifice yourself like that. But it's just like fireworks and stuff like that. So she took out some of them, at very least injured them. By the time they got in there, she was already gone. Because she'd already said, like, basically, Abbott was extinct. Like, you're just not willing to realize it yet, that you are kind of a fossil of a bygone era. It's a new era now. But, sadly, she wasn't able to make it in time because Wendy, Bobby, as well as the other children were captured, and by the time she catches up, it's like they're all gone. So that's how things kind of play out on that front. Obviously, we have everything with Adi and Ronnie, which I keep like pronouncing her name different like every time. So sometimes I'll correctly pronounce it as like Ronnie, and other times I'll be like Rainey. But Ronnie and him were separated. They're brought to the preserve, and I'm like, oh, once again, all these storylines kind of collapsing upon itself. Granted, the preserve's already empty by this point, but it's kind of extra motivation of, right, your wife can't see you or hear you, but she's going to be sealed off from the rest of his life. She's not contagious, right? But not everyone knows her extenuating circumstances. It's like he wants to give a BS reason why it's like, no. It's like, because he's trying to say, like, to be fair, it's like, yeah, it keeps adapting and stuff like that. To be fair, it should be connoted that, like, right, she's not contagious after 9 to 10 years. The fact is that he was able to kind of keep that under control should be taken in a note, but it's more so because Adi wants to try and pretend, but, like, even Adi's like, you don't need to motivate me, just give me back her. And it's like, are you done? And he's like, basically, I knew you were bluffing, but you need to actually make a cure. And he's like, give it to me. You're going to make enough doses for me to have, because I will get to decide who lives and dies. And like, who the hell put you in charge? But I guess for him, it's like, I'm going to be the savior of the human race. But the fact of the matter is, we got to wipe out some stuff here and there. Probably like the moment they get the cure, okay, now he probably wants to take the cure and not only heal the virus, but he probably thinks he can weaponize it and be a means of wiping it out so that no other hybrids are ever born in this world again, and also wiping out the hybrids of, so a mass genocide type of situation. So he's on that. They might try to redeem him in some shape or form. Not necessarily redeem him, but it's that thing of understanding why your villain is the way they are. Why he feels the way he is. Maybe it's just like he's straight up just a douchebag that wants to wipe out this species, or maybe there's a little bit more complexity to him. We'll ultimately have to wait and see. I'm one of those people that's like, oh, you want to just be a straight up villain? That's fine. But I also appreciate a villain like there's some nuance in like, oh, the reason why I am the way I am is because of my backstory, whether it's because, was I just a naturally hateful person, or was it a situation of, no, like, something I lost, like he may have lost some people that were important to him, and he associates the virus with the hybrid. So to get revenge for what he lost, whoever he lost in particular, broke him to the point when he looks at the hybrids, he sees the person he lost. So it's like, I got to destroy you in their name, whether it was his own kids, whether it was a kid or kids, or whether it was a significant other, whatever the case may be, or maybe just family members. So I think it has to be, I think that's what drives a lot of hate, not just fear and, not understanding, but also like loss kind of drove that. And I'm sure like that fear kind of aggravates that loss. So I think that's going to be one of his motivating factors. We'll ultimately have to wait and see whether that ends up being the case or not. So we do eventually have Gus coming upon a plane, which I'm like, we do see the flyers coming out of it. So part of me wonders if that is a while back, because that is definitely, because I was wondering, like, did that person have anything to do with those? It could have been someone else who was like just a random pilot, or maybe it was someone associated with the preserve or whatever. once again, we never really got on like how the fact that she was able to make that happen, but maybe some of the people that were connected to her, knowing what she was all about, were like, now we're going to pass on this message. That's why I think it's so interesting. We've never touched on how she managed to kind of pull that off, but she's had many couple years to kind of make arrangements and make all that stuff happen. But because we didn't see a pilot there was that pilot a while back. It didn't seem like the plane was crashing. It almost seemed like it landed, but I could be mistaken. I was about to say, like, could it be like the pilot with the parachute, like the person with the parachute, like, what, 2 episodes back? Maybe that was them. Maybe not. I'm trying to think. No, that wasn't even 2 episodes back. That was actually 3 episodes back, because that was episode 5, I believe. But I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking too much about it. Like, that probably isn't correlated. But I just think it's interesting that you didn't even see a body there, but there was grass growing on the inside, so it seemed like it had been there for a while. But ultimately, Tommy catches up to him and talks to him. He's like, here, if you lost any of this, you never forgive yourself if you left it behind. He's like, because he talked about the fact is that, like, he broke all those trophies of hit, like, that Tommy broke all those trophies of his. He's like, yeah, and look how I've kind of turned out. I don't want you to kind of end up like me. And he opens up to Gus because it's like, Gus is feeling, a way about, like, right, I have no mom or dad. He wants to go to the preserve because for him it's like, I'm tired of being the weird one. I want to be around people who are like me. As like special or not, I don't want to be treated like the outsider anymore. There are people who just want to kill me for being what I am. I just want to be like everyone else. And if I can find some people that are going to be, I can blend in with, I don't have to hide who I am, I can be myself, then, that's why he wants to go to the preserve. But Tommy ends up telling him about his baby, because we find out, like, in the past, when he's like, oh, is my baby human? The nurse kept avoiding it. So you're like, oh, this isn't good. And he comes across his baby and sees his baby isn't human. And he kind of storms off and he starts panicking. And he's about to leave. And lo and behold, who does he run into? Dr. Singh himself. And he's like, I don't even know what kind he is. He's like, I don't know if I can do this. And Addie's like, we never know what we're fully capable of doing until the time comes. Ironically, where his story is right now, for that to come full circle like that for him. And so we do find out, because I was wondering when he started telling the story, I was like, is he going to make it seem like he went back, but in actuality he didn't, and he's just saying that to Gus? But it's like, no, he actually did go back, because we saw him press the infirmary button, but he says by the time he got back there, she was gone as well as their baby. So I guess, like, the military had already rolled. I'm pretty sure, because, like, we shall see him press the button. I don't think he could have lied, but, and maybe he changed his mind at the last second. We still didn't know, but I think he was being truthful then, because Gus has already had enough of people lying to him. So he never found his family again, and he's done a lot of stuff that he regrets. He's like, I've hurt people. A lot of times it was intentionally, but sometimes it wasn't. And the fact is that he never found them. And it's so interesting to see, like, all 3 of them have lost people in some shape or form. Gus doesn't know where his mom is. Bear doesn't know where Becky, we'll probably keep calling her Bear, doesn't know where her sister is. He doesn't know where his wife and child are, his son. And it's like, and I'm sure that regret stays with me, because it's like, if I had, he's like, I wasn't scared of my son, I was scared of me, because I didn't know what to do. Like, I didn't know how to handle all that, and I was scared of, like, I think for him, it's like, he probably felt like, what if I fail? Like, what if I let this child down? But it's like, by the time he decided to do something about it, it's like, it was already too late. The child was gone. But at least they're not going. They're somewhere in that world. But the fact is that he's kind of done a lot of stuff that he's not proud of, that he's kind of had to live with, But obviously we see, once again, Gus being that light that kind of, has changed both Bear and Tommy in good ways. And, Tommy's saying that, we'll go together. Where we go, we stick together. Where will we go? He's like, anywhere we want. What are we going to do? Whatever we want to do. It's like, maybe you can teach me how to make that syrup. We'll need maple trees. We'll find some. A lot of them. It's like, well, then we'll go to a forest. It's like, can Bear come? He's like, I'll have to think about that. And they kind of laugh. But sadly, Gus had contacted the preserver, and we're like, no, we know at this point in time it's already been taken over by Abbott. So Tommy ends up, we hear a bang, and I'm like, what happened? What? And then, like, Tommy grabs his shot. I was like, oh, was he shot? And he was. And they show up, Abbott checking Tommy's chest and seeing the marks and being like, oh, he's a traitor. He's getting what he deserves, and he ends up taking Gus away, and they end up at the preserve. But he's thinking to himself, he's like, no, I can't let them know that I can talk. Don't let them know you can talk. So he gets brought to Audie, and Audie's saying all the stuff on the recording about like what he's going to have to do. And when the time comes, there was even this moment with Johnny. He was like, don't worry, this is only going to take a little while. I don't know whether he was like, oh, don't worry, what happens about to happen, it's going to be over before you know it. Like, so don't be scared. Or like, is that supposed to make everything better when you're like basically about to dissect this kid? Is that supposed to? And maybe it's just for your own sake you're trying to. But then like the moment he said that, I immediately was like, you don't think he's an insider, right? Like that maybe he's a part of like some resistance or something that is like very much like the Animal Army, but maybe like instead of kids, it's adults. Like, is he part of some resistance? Like, did he get closer to Abbott for that case? Because once again, we still don't know why Abbott has him on, in particular, has Johnny on a short lease. It seems like Johnny screwed something up in the past to be where we are now. Who knows? But then, like, obviously, Audie, like, oh, you want this candy bar? And he hands it to him, and the guy says, thanks. And it shocks Addie because it's like, wait, you can talk. And it's like, all right, Johnny, I want to keep this one for a little while. But Abbott, no. Find me a different one, and you're not going to say anything to him. So I'm trying to remember what it was, but there was something else that was brought up this episode. Oh, right. Something we never got an answer for, and this episode kind of brings up is, how did Wendy end up with Amy? Because she was left outside Amy's at the zoo and everything. So for one, that means someone already knew she was there, which is like, why would someone already know she was there ahead of time? So that kind of makes me think, like, maybe it's not just Johnny. I mean, because Johnny is connected to all this, and we know that Wendy was, well, let's go ahead with the reveal. We find out that Wendy's sister, Bear's sister is Wendy, interestingly enough. And it's like, wow, once again, drawing these connections. I was like, this is so good. Like, everything getting tied together like that is so incredible. But the fact is that, like, that's when I'm like, we know that the military took her sister. So it's like, how did she end up at Amy's? In front of the zoo and everything. So that's why I'm like, Johnny, or at least maybe someone else a part of this is kind of a resistance. I think Johnny's a part of some resistance. I think he's just playing low key. It's like, there's some sacrifices going to be made along the way, but, you know, it's gathering the intelligence he can, because I think they're planning to make a move. Like I said, all the stuff he was saying to, like, I could be 100% wrong, but everything he said to Gus makes me think, like, oh, just wait a little bit longer, it's going to be okay, like. But then he was willing to let Audie have him, like, not unless he was trying to be like, no, don't. I was like, okay, Audie, if you want me to, like, I'll pick a different kid. You know, I don't know. It could have just simply have been like like, it's going to be over before you know it. You won't feel any pain. You'll be knocked out type of thing. I don't know. Maybe Johnny isn't the insider. I think he is. But at the very least, maybe there is some adult resistance that is helping out, because we still don't know how Wendy got there in the first place, you know? So there's still some unanswered questions. So there's that. The fact is, Tommy ends up getting picked up by someone. The moment someone rolls up, I was like, that's got to be Amy. She must have been listening in on the radio and found out about everything. And so she ends up taking Tommy to get healed. And Tommy's like, who are you? She's like, rest, because tomorrow we go get our kids back. I'm like, yeah. I was like, that's so dope. So that happens. Honestly, it's pretty much like the last 8 minutes. That entire sequence, I was getting teary-eyed, because it was like a beautiful thing. Like, we're drawing on these connections, knowing that, like, oh, Becky Bear, you know, her sister's out there, that she's Wendy, and then her and Gus meeting. It's like, it's, you know, it's a beautiful thing of, like, once again, all these storylines converging in this moment, you know. And there's even, like, this sadness to it, like, where you have, like, Ronnie, like, putting up those 2 tile pieces saying us, you know, that we're still in this, and still having to cross that line because they end up taking another kid, and you're hoping that, like, maybe something else would happen, but obviously Abbott's there, so got to get to work, and so he's got that buzzsaw, and you're just like, oh, that poor. It looks like maybe like a I was about to say like a lizard, or not lizard, but maybe like I was about to say iguana kid or something, but you're like, oh, poor kid. You know, it's just like, that's really messed up to think about. Like, I mean, it's not like he's the first one. I mean, luckily they don't show you. I don't think I'd be able to handle that. But like, we know that plenty have been dissected over these years and stuff like that, and experimented on, which is just horrible. Because once again, none of the hybrids, because Gus is the oldest hybrid they've seen. You know, that's why even Audie's like, oh, what, this old is never, because Gus is like 10. I guess like everyone else is like a little bit younger than that, because he is the oldest. He's literally the first. So that shows you how special he is. And even his interactions with animals over the course of the series, like, that he's kind of got this connection that he can speak to them. So, but in that moment, like, you know, like Bobby was playing with the ball and it rolls over to Gus, and Gus walks around, and then everyone's there, and, you know, especially Wendy, and she's like, hi, and she's like, I'm Wendy, and he's like, hi, I'm Gus. And she comes over to him, kind of looking at him for a minute, and then she hugs him. And then it's like the most heartwarming, beautiful moment of them coming together, because it's basically the whole conversation about, like, you know, the families that you make yourselves. And, like, obviously a lot of people are scattered. Amy's away from Wendy, but as well as the rest of the children, because they're under her protection and she cares about them as well. Plus, you know, Tommy being separated, not only from his son and his wife, wherever they are in the world, but also, you know, this new kid that's in his life, you know, Gus, and Bear being on her own, not knowing where either two of them are at. So, but it was like just that moment, him being embraced, because he's never really he's never been around other kids like him, and in that moment to feel embraced and feel welcome, where he doesn't feel like the outsider, he feels like he found somewhere he belongs. Once again, the family you make. And it's just, it's such a heartwarming moment. I was like, like I said, I was legitimately tearing up. I am a big sap. I never deny that. I always find the irony behind it, because I'm someone that's never very good at telling people how I really feel. So ironically, I can be very open about TV shows, but not human interactions. I'm a weirdo like that. But nevertheless, it was, you know, kind of beautiful in its own right, with all of that. You know, once again, the whole stuff of Addie and Abbott is super sad and depressing, but at least there's some hopefulness wrapped around everything else, so it's not just an utterly depressing ending. Which, an apocalyptic thing like this, I could definitely see this having a more, there can be some depressing points along the way, but I feel like this could definitely be like a very, like, when it's all said and done, this story feels like it is about hope. That it can be a hopeful thing. Whereas, like, other stuff, I'm like, it seems like it could definitely have a depressing, sad ending. Hopeful yet sad. I feel like this could just have a happy, hopeful ending. But we'll have to wait and see. But, and then at the very end, with the channel still being open on the radio, Birdie gets in contact with Bear, and it's like, who is this? And I'm like, yo! And she's back in Alaska. I can only assume she went back. That's where she's been, like, maybe not the entire time, but at least some of the time, because for her, it's like, she's probably trying to find if she can find out where the virus came from and stuff like that, then maybe she can find a way to kind of stop all of this. Like, maybe she could save the day, knowing what she knows about the research, probably what's in her mind, plus researching other, maybe viruses to counteract this virus, to kind of make a vaccine, or trying to find this virus again so that they can make a vaccine, she can make a vaccine from it. Whatever the case may be. Maybe going forward we'll find out what she's been up to for the past 10 years, but we do see that she's still out there, so it's definitely going to be really, really interesting to see where everything takes us potentially going forward. At the time of me recording this, which it is June 6th at the time of me recording this, it has not been revealed whether or not Netflix is going to renew Sweet Tooth for a second season. To be fair, it just came out Friday, so once again, Netflix is usually, it takes a while before they come to a decision. They want to give a show a little time to decide whether the numbers are where they want them to be. I hope the show gets the buzz and reviews, positive reviews and reception and numbers it needs to have a season 2, because I'd love to see where a season 2 would take us. There's still a lot we don't know about. Once again, like with the mystery about you know, Birdie, like what she's been up to all this time, understanding who Abbott is, this potential cure, like for Addie, because a lot's riding on the line for him, but also like how much he's willing to go for, not just for the world and not just because Abbott's threatening him, but it's also like, you know, for his wife's sake. That's his main motivation. But obviously Gus and, Wendy, as well as everyone from the preserve being together, like, are they going to be able to find a way out of this themselves working together? We have Tommy and Amy together. Obviously Becky/Bear in contact with Birdie now and letting her know, like, whoa, like, oh, you're Gus's mom. Gus is fine, and then her potentially finding out. Because obviously, Amy is on the radio listening in, trying to figure out what, like, the last men are up to and stuff like that, like, and positionings and stuff like that. So it could be a situation where, like, the signal, they kind of end up on the same signal and they are able to get in contact. And, I mean, this could also potentially, because we also need to wonder, like, what Tiger and the others are up to. The animal army, maybe, like, Bear can get in contact with them and it's like, all right, let's mend some fences because we got some, like, hybrids to save, so that could end up bringing them back together. I mean, who knows? Maybe things haven't been going as great as Tiger kind of hoped that they would. Maybe being in charge hasn't been all that she thought it'd be cracked to be. Who knows? A lot of questions. Also, like Tommy and his wife and son, like, where are they out there in the world? We'll ultimately have to wait and see. Like I said, I hope we get a second season because I'd love to see where this would take us. Because like we've seen how Gus has interacted with other animals. I'm curious, are any of the other hybrids like that? So maybe Gus could ultimately have, like, him and the others could lead an entire army of, like, animals, like, them being kind of like I brought up before, like the Sleeping Beauty. No, not the Sleeping Beauty, the Snow White. Other circumstances of being able to kind of like, summon an army of animals to help you. Like I said, we've seen little winks and nods to that at this point, but because it was even interesting because Adi was talking about the fact is that his there was a particular thing, like a representation of, like, I forgot what it was he was referencing. It was something his wife had got him, and it's something that usually takes on the form of a deer, a red deer. Which, interesting, there's also, like, that constellation that I forgot to talk about in episode 7 where Richard and Birdie saw one, and it's like Orion, but it, like, has a different name that it's like it means deer, and it's in the shape of a deer, and it's a whole thing. So just a lot of interesting things to kind of think about. But yeah, we'll ultimately have to wait and see. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.